The first time the Tarsac Confederation laid eyes on Earth, they dismissed it as a backwater world rich only in volcanic activity and hostility. A Class M, 3-death world. The designation meant it was barely hospitable to life, with erratic weather, high levels of tectonic instability, and a biosphere so diverse and aggressive it bordered on biological warfare. No major galactic civilization had ever colonized such a planet. None had survived the attempt. But humans? They thrived on it. The Confederation first heard of humans through intercepted transmissions, radio waves riddled with violence, laughter, and music. And then the probes returned with images. Forests stretching for miles, oceans roaring like wild beasts, deserts that swallowed life whole, and in the midst of it, fragile bipeds who walked upright and stared down storms like gods too proud to kneel. Curiosity wasn't what brought the Tarsac to Earth, though. It was desperation. The Mythic War had dragged on for decades longer than anyone predicted. Resources were strained. Shipyards were running dry. The Confederation needed more metals, more fuel, more soldiers, and above all, more resolve. They had heard rumors that humans, despite their primitive state, had all of these. That was reason enough to make contact. First contact wasn't planned. The cruiser Soval next crashed into Earth's atmosphere after a hyperspace jump gone wrong. It tore through the sky like a wounded animal and landed hard in the Colorado Rockies, shearing off trees and rock until it finally came to rest in a snowy ravine. By the time the rescue ships arrived, the humans were already there. They didn't come with weapons drawn. Not at first. The first ones came on snowmobiles and in pickup trucks. Hunters, park rangers, locals. Some just followed the smoke trail. They found the ship half buried in rock and ice, surrounded by steaming wreckage and jagged pieces of metal still humming with residual energy. And then they walked right in. One of the junior officers on the ship, a Tarsac named Veltrin, recorded the first encounter. His personal log was later studied in thousands of military academies across the galaxy. They're just walking in. No armor. No suits. Breathing our air. They should be coughing up blood. What kind of species does this? Veltrin had been ready to fire. His claws hovered over the plasma controls. But the humans, laughing, frost clinging to their beards and jackets, just waved and tried to speak. Their leader, a grizzled man in his 60s named Hank, offered coffee. Coffee. The crew of the Soval Nex had no protocol for this. They had no translator ready, no diplomatic procedures. So they did what any intelligent species would do when faced with a seemingly suicidal species showing no fear of alien technology. They waited. The humans didn't wait. They brought blankets, food, tools, generators. Within a day, a makeshift camp surrounded the downed cruiser. When the rescue ships finally arrived, they found the Tarsac crew sitting around a fire pit with the locals, passing around mugs of something hot and bitter, and talking through gestures and drawings in the snow. The Confederation was intrigued. They offered the humans a place in the galactic network, trade, knowledge, medicine, everything. Humanity accepted, of course, but not with the submission or awe the Confederation expected. No, the humans joined like they were stepping into a neighbor's garage. We've got a lot to offer, they said. And we've got a hell of a lot to learn. That was the first surprise. The second came during the Dravik insurrection. The Dravik were an aquatic species bred for endurance and coordination. When they rebelled against the Confederation, no one expected it to last more than a few cycles. But the Dravik knew the oceans. They used pressure currents and thermocline layers like highways, ambushing fleets with terrifying precision. Whole Tarsac units were lost. Morale plummeted. Enter humanity. They didn't know ocean combat. They had no gills, no pressure resistance. But they studied. Fast. Within weeks, human scientists reverse-engineered deep-sea suits capable of surviving the Dravik depths. They modified submarines into sleek, silent hunters. They painted pin-up art on the sides, named their torpedoes things like Old Betsy and Freedom Stick, and dove headfirst into the abyss. What followed was not war. It was theater. Dravik ambushes were met with depth charges disguised as sea creatures. Underwater minefields were disarmed by divers with nerves of steel and hands steadier than surgical machines. One human commander, Captain Reyes, led a counterattack using only sonar pulses and coded whale song to signal her fleet. They called her the Siren. She never lost a single ship. After the insurrection was crushed, the Confederation officially ranked humans as Adaptive Combat Tier 4, a designation only given to species with proven combat versatility. Humanity wore it like a badge of honor. Then they asked what Tier 5 looked like. No one had ever survived long enough to be Tier 5. Humanity took that as a challenge. Then came the event that cemented humanity's place in the galactic psyche, the Siege of Veltraxis. The enemy was the Khazar Dominion. 9-foot-tall brutes with armor fused to their bones and a hatred for anything not bred in their war factories. They attacked Veltraxis, a critical supply world, with overwhelming force. The planet's defenders held for a week, then 4 days, then hours. When the call for reinforcements went out, the only ships close enough to respond were human. They came in old vessels, patched with duct tape and hope. Freighters turned gunships. Mining rigs converted into drop pods. One of them was literally a retrofitted space casino. But they came. The Khazar laughed at first. Then they burned. In the streets of Veltraxis, human marines fought with everything: rifles, fists, sharpened tools. They used buildings as traps, turned vehicles into bombs, and weaponized the terrain itself. One squad, cut off for 48 hours, survived by rigging a fallen tower into a giant crossbow using cables and an old engine. They launched steel girders through enemy lines like javelins. The footage went viral. Another unit, callsign Brick House, held a ruined city block with nothing but 3 Marines, a stolen plasma turret, and a bulldog named Tank. Tank got a medal. By the time the Confederation reinforcements arrived, the humans had pushed the Khazar off the planet. Not because they had superior numbers, not because they had better weapons, because they refused to break. A Khazar warlord, captured and interrogated later, was asked why they failed. His response was simple: because humans burn slow. You think they're broken. You think they're done. And then they crawl out of the fire grinning with blood in their teeth and laughter in their throats. You don't win against that. You just survive it. From that day forward, humanity was no longer considered the junior species. They were the firebreak, the iron wall, the ones sent in when everything else failed. They weren't the most advanced. They weren't the strongest. But they were the last thing the enemy saw when the lights went out. And in the dark corridors of war, among the stars soaked with the blood of 1,000 species, one whisper began to echo louder and louder.
If you like the story, please subscribe our channel. Thank you for watching.